One of my favourite pastimes is playing video games. I've been playing them for over 3 decades, and if my backlog account is anything to go by, I've played a lot ranging from oldies, newbies, indies, AAA blockbusters, single player RPGs with gripping narratives, to goofy multiplayer with pals. Over the years, I've been thinking of what my favourites are, the cream of the crop. However, I've never had a concrete list until now, and since it's the holiday season, I decided to pick my 25 favourites, with the only rule being 1 per series. Otherwise, you'd be hearing the same few franchises, which wouldn't be very fun to listen to. Grab yourself some snacks and a hot cold or cold drink, relax, and enjoy the video as it's time to reveal my 25 favourite games of all time. Indies are incredible at putting out some innovative pieces of work, doing things that a lot of AAAs won't touch anymore, as well as tackle certain subjects that again the AAAs won't likely touch. Thanks to the age of digital media, it's a lot more accessible for smaller developers to make their dreams a reality, and for people to discover them. I've grown to enjoy a lot of indies throughout the years, and I had a few that could have been on this list, like Cuphead, inspired by run-and-done titles and the golden age era of cartoons. But thinking about it for a while, my absolute favourite indie is from Venezuela, about a bartender in the dystopian future. Valhalla, a cyberpunk bartender action game, is a visual novel experience inspired by retro PC 98 games, as well as the dev's own experience living in Venezuela, where you play as Jill, a late 20s bartender who interacts with a colourful bunch of characters that you and Jill may or may not like. Despite being a visual novel, there are branching paths that can lead to different events that depend on what drink you give to the customers, as well as the amount, making each playthrough feel fresh. The soundtrack is also one of my favourites in any video game, composed by the talented Michael Kelly, that is great to listen to when writing for videos such as this. What made Valhalla cure its way onto this list is how darn relatable some of the elements of the story, as well as the leading lady Jill, are for me. Jill has to work in an environment where you have to interact with people you may not like, and as someone who has a decade experience working in retail, interacting with the most obnoxious customers, paying rent, and still finding a place in the world, I can relate to her on a personal level. Despite being a game set in a harsh world, where you play as a bystander with no control to change things, I appreciate it for not being nihilistic, as the story has a lot of uplifting moments, with the small interactions between friends and co-workers. It may not be everyone's cup of tea, but I think any adult with a job working in retail may possibly enjoy this indie darling. I've played a variety of fighting games from Darkstalkers, Undernight, Street Fighter, and the Capcom Versus series. The genre is home to some of the best character designs in any medium, as well as fun to play with various people, whether it be at home with family or friends, or with online pals over Discord. I enjoy playing high-octane matches with friends for hours and seeing some of the most bizarre scenarios to ever transpire. I've been playing Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 for over a decade, and thanks to mods, the game still lives on. However, one of the biggest flaws when it comes to most games in the genre is that once you remove another person from the equation, there isn't much to do besides the arcade mode. A lot of these games live and die by who is still playing them, and as an adult, it's hard to meet up with people due to busy schedules. There are still fighting games that I still enjoy playing, even without someone else to play with, and one example is Namco's Soul Calibur 2. Soul Calibur 2 includes a standard arcade and versus modes, but also includes different variations like survival, time attack, and team battle mode, which allows you to create a team of 3 warriors. My absolute favourite mode that I keep coming back to is Weapon Master mode, where you compete in various missions and labyrinths. I used to spend hours on that mode alone. Unlike today where most stuff would be DLC, Soul Calibur 2 has a lot of unlockables like new fighters, stages, and a good number of weapons with different properties for all characters that can be used in both single player and multiplayer. This game has a good range of fighters from Mitsurugi, Taki, Tayum, and my favourite Yoshimitsu, each with their own backstories and playstyles. This game also has some guest characters, which is common practice now, but blew my mind as a kid, especially the GameCube version, which included Link from The Legend of Zelda. The same positive notes can apply with Soul Calibur 1 and 3, especially 3 with its character customization and Chronicles of the Sword mode, but 2 was the first one I played and has a special place in my heart. While I'm not big on driving simulators like Forza, I do enjoy various kart races like Mario Kart, as well as arcade races such as Daytona USA. However, the best races, to me, are F-Zero X and DX. I love both games with how fast you go, the amazing tracks, rockin' soundtracks, and the risk and reward gameplay with the boost button allowing you to go extra fast in favour of using health. Unfortunately, only one can make it on this list, and for me, I slightly prefer DX, not only for looking better, but I slightly prefer the courses and the additional content. DX was made by Amusement Vision, who not only created the Super Monkey Ball games, but also had plenty of experience with arcade races, making them the perfect fit for the job, offering challenging yet replayable courses. The game includes tons of modes and unlockables, like new customization parts to make your own vehicle, additional remixes of classic songs, and the courses and races from the arcade version if you are good at the game, as this game is bust to the walls hard, especially when trying out anything above normal difficulty. This game also has a story mode starring Captain Falcon that offers some of the hardest levels I've experienced, yet some of the most funniest dialogue interactions that only the arcade staff at Sega could only come up with. 1 minute Falcon is racing his arch-rival Samurai Goro, and the next Falcon's vehicle is attached to a bomb that will blow up if the vehicle's speed goes below a certain threshold. The insane difficulty does weigh this game down a bit, but I always have a blast booting this radical racer. When it comes to great 2D platformers, the Mega Man games are the ones that come to mind. I've played a lot of the classic and X titles, and while I would say the classics are better when it comes to consistency, my favourite one is from the X generation, which is also my very first. Mega Man X4 was my introduction to the Blue Bomber's Odyssey back in the late 90s on an old Windows 98 machine, which, despite originally playing it with a keyboard, I still love this game, and thanks to the X Odyssey collection, I can actually play it with a decent controller anytime I want. Seriously, I don't recommend playing it with a keyboard. While the plot is complete rubbish, it does feature some of the most laughable lines that never gets old. I still listen to the infamous "What am I fighting for" speech from time to time. Out of all the Mega Man games, X4 is the most replayable, as not only you can play as 2 characters, each with their own unique movesets, but it also has the least amount of backtracking, making you choose to fight off any Maverick you desire. You can make it easier for yourself with the enemy weaknesses, but it's fun trying to fight them without it. While some of the environments haven't held up, the sprite work is one of my absolute favourites, and the music is also one of my favourites in the Blue Bomber's library. It's one of the platformers I keep coming back to, even after 20.5 decades later. I remember going on holiday abroad as a kid and seeing a bunch of arcade machines, and the ones I enjoyed the most were the various Metal Slug titles. These are run-and-done titles where you play as mercenaries killing evil syndicates, aliens, mummies, and plenty more, either on foot or in the many armoured vehicles you find. Metal Slug is something I can easily go back to for an hour, turn my brain off, and have a blast. The first game is probably the most grounded, taking out an evil army with a tank, but each installment increases the insanity with new characters, weapons, vehicles, enemies, and scenarios. Me and my younger brother usually go back to Metal Slug X, a remix version of 2 that removes the notorious showdowns and 3. I would probably put both of them on this list, but if I had to pick one, I would say 3 takes the crown with its branching paths that, while lead to the same goal, does make each playthrough slightly different. The first level is storming a beach, only to be stopped by a giant hermit crab packing heat. The next you are fighting hordes of zombies and possibly becoming one, and it just even gets more ridiculous. The final mission is one of my absolute favourite final levels ever, as you team up with the enemy forces from the previous installments to take down the Martians, who have taken the character you originally played as in space and then falling back down to Earth, killing their queen. The game oozes with charm from amazing yet sprites that SNK provided during the arcade generation, as well as some of the sound effects. If you want an insane run and gun game, look no further than Metal Slug 3. From one game that doesn't take itself too seriously to another, we have a game developed by Rare who are known to have fun. I only have a couple of games by them on this list, but they have a huge gallery to choose from GoldenEye, Conker's Bad Fur Day, and Digicon Racing. Their most popular game is perhaps the N64 Collectathon, starring a bear and a bird named Banjo-Kazooie. It was one game I grew up with on the Nintendo 64, but I haven't played it since I was a kid. That was until I revisited it this year, and despite some issues towards the late game, I had a blast with it. The plot was simple and that led to some silly scenarios, and the character interactions between Banjo, Kazooie, and the rest of the cast were something I usually found hilarious with the British satire style comedy that I grew up with. Gruntilda is perhaps one of my favourite villains to date, with just how funny she is, mocking the heroes and other cast members. I loved exploring the various worlds, such as Treasure Trove Cove, Free CZ Pete, and Mad Monster Mansion, and the various missions you do. It has the right amount of space to explore, as well as collectibles that don't feel overwhelming. It even has some fun secrets to boot, that are there for the sake of being fun. The platforming still holds up well, and the imaginative movesets are used quite frequently too. There are probably a lot of 3D platformers I could have put on this list that probably feel a lot better to play, but I don't think any of them could top Banjo-Kazooie for me. The game did get a sequel with Banjo-Tooie, but at the time of writing, I have not played it. Maybe in the near future. A good mystery always gets me hooked. I love trying to figure out the puzzles behind these stories. If I'm right, I feel smart. But I love it when I'm wrong too, when the writer catches you off guard, but makes sense in the tale they are telling, which makes you think for a while after experiencing it for the first time. I've played a decent number of mystery titles, from AI the Somnium Files, 999 to 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, the latter which almost made it on this list. However, my absolute favourite comes from the Danganronpa trilogy. I've heard about this franchise for almost a decade without any spoilers. from the early Countdown and Commentary community channel days, but it wasn't after experiencing 999 during a Steam sale that I was interested in trying it out, especially after hearing the premise about a group of high school students trapped in a school participating in a death game. The first game was alright with an interesting premise, but there was a lot of characters that I either didn't care for or despised. Danganronpa 2 was an improvement with a better cast and story. However, I feel Spike Chunsoft hit the nail with V3 Killing Harmony that improved everything from the previous installments, from key to the controls, visuals and gameplay. I love the addition of Debate Scrum, Sight Taxi, which reminds me of those old arcade races, and Hangman's Gambit is actually decent this time around. However, the most crucial things about these kinds of games are the mystery and the characters, which this game excels at. I was fully invested in the overarching plot, and without spoiling anything, this game subverted my expectations multiple times in a good way, while tying in the previous installment's themes of hope and despair. The cast is at its best here, which made the deaths that much more impactful. The finale of V3 is perhaps one of my absolute favourites in any piece of fiction that I still think about from time to time. You do have to play the previous titles to fully appreciate V3, but getting to the finale makes it all worth it. One type of game you will see often on this list are JRPGs. They usually have some of the best stories, characters, music, while mostly having some fun, in-depth gameplay. The first JRPG on this list is one I recently played again for the channel, which is Sega's Dreamcast gem, Skies of Arcadia. This plot is pretty simple, especially when compared to its brethren, but it does it with pride, as the adventure is fun from beginning to end, with some of the most whimsical characters you will ever meet in the genre. Our main lead, Vice, doesn't have a sad backstory compared to other RPG protags, but just loves to explore to discover uncharted lands. He is what if Sonic was a JRPG protagonist, throwing out quips to his foes while helping out others in those in need. Ita and Fina are also lovable, with Ita just being as charismatic as Vice, being the jokester of the group, while Fina being the fish out of water heroine, yearning about the world around her. I love the other party members you get, especially Drachma. The villains are for the most part really fun, they have their own motivations, or like Deloto, who are just having fun being evil. I love the game also uses its gameplay to really sell Vice's goal of becoming a pirate captain like his father, as you get your own ship, complete your own flag, discover artifacts and locations throughout the skies, and even recruit your own crew, each with their own ability to help out in ship combat. While the ship combat isn't entertaining to watch, it is really fun to play and plan out what your enemy is going to do next. And the grounded battles are really fun with plenty of customization, with different colored moonstones you can use with their own abilities, and the super moves you can give to each party member. While there are plenty of games about being a pirate, I feel this is one that can give you that sense of being one. I do hope this game does get ported in the near future so more people can play this treasure. I was properly introduced to Pit thanks to the Super Smash Bros. Brawl trailer back in 2006, and during that time I downloaded Icarus on the Wii Virtual Console. It was a fun yet flawed game, but if there was one thing I really enjoyed about it was the Greek mythology setting, but with a comical twist. And I would have liked to see it expanded, and during E3 2010, I got my wish. I watched that trailer so many times until I got my hands on it back in March 2012. It was the reason why I got a 3DS to begin with. I love the interactions between Pit, Palutena, and the rest of the cast, talking about the situation they're in, or even just goofing around. While dialogue between characters non-stop can be irritating when playing in most games, I feel it enhances the experience, giving off that cartoon vibe, and thanks to the 3DS's dual screen, the text doesn't get in the way. The game is split into two parts, the on-rail shooter moments that feels like a roller coaster with amazing set pieces, and the ground-based third-person shooter combat, which is just as fun. While the controllers are a bit unconventional, especially for left-handed people like myself, it wasn't much of a bother for me, especially with the controller options you have. The amount of weapon types makes the game highly replayable, each with their strengths and weaknesses that would make me tackle the same stages differently, and the amount of challenges will make me keep coming back to it. Uprising gave life to an old NES game and made me love Pit and Paratena even more. I'm glad Sakurai decided to give life again to this fallen angel, and hopefully we get to see this lovable guy fly again. Crossovers are great, as they can introduce you into new shows, games, or other things you probably would never heard of before experiencing a crossover. That's how I discovered anime like Icarus and Kasan thanks to Tatsunoko vs Capcom, as well as finding out about Gravity Rush thanks to PlayStation All-Stars. The opposite happened with Soul Calibur 2 thanks to Yanks and Kyuzen. One particular fighting game that got me into many series is Super Smash Bros. I've played throughout the entire Smash library ever since the N64 original back in 1999. I was aware of Mario, Donkey Kong, Zelda, Pokemon, Star Fox, and F-Zero, but I had no idea who Samus or Ness was, and it was the same with me with the Fire Emblem Lords. I discovered a lot of games thanks to this platformer fighter series. I played a lot of them at great length, but what would I consider my absolute favourite? The N64 was my first experience. Me was a huge improvement from its predecessor. Brawl perhaps has the best single player content with the Subspace Embassy, and Wii U/3DS fine-tuned the physics of the previous titles. Now I see no reason to go back to Wii U/3DS, as Ultimate does everything that one does, but better. Ultimate really is the best of Smash, as not only does it feature every single fighter from the previous installments that people were dying to see come back, but also a couple of big time villains, as well as ones that people would thought could only happen in their dreams. Each character had a lot of love and care calling back to the origin titles. A majority of the stages came back too, along with 1,000 pieces of music, both old and new. The game is, for the most part, pretty balanced in a competitive sense. No, I'm someone who now mostly plays casually, and there are a lot of customization options for you and your friends to enjoy, like turning on and off certain items, team battle, playing 2 stages at once, and so much more. Despite having my favourite classic mode in the franchise, the single player is pretty lacking with the New World of Light mode that overstays its welcome. Still, this is a game I can easily put on for a few hours, especially on a sit day, being my most played Switch game to date. I've mentioned DX a few entries ago, but the team that developed that GameCube classic doesn't stop there, as Amusement Vision eventually became Ryuga Gotoku Studio, the creators of the Yakuza franchise. My experience with the Yakuza franchise is at the moment minimal, as I've only played 1, but if it's anything like 0, then I'm sure this series will become a new favourite. This Japanese sandbox is so much fun, as I've gotten lost experiencing so many of the side activities like karaoke, pool, bowling, playing classic arcade Sega titles, real estate and cabaret management, and so much more that it feels like I have multiple games in one disc. The combat is simple but pure fun, playing as 2 characters, each with their own unique fighting styles, and seeing the number of heat accidents I've seen is extraordinary that I haven't seen all of them yet, making coming back to it in the future that much fun. while seeing it at face value through screenshots and tips, it makes it seem like it's just a goofy title, and if you are doing a number of side stories and minigames, then yeah, it is. But when experiencing the main campaign, it becomes an emotional crime drama that honestly almost made me tear up on a few occasions, especially when the story centers around Mazuma. I made a video on this one this year where I go into more detail, but to put it in one sentence, it's incredible. I'm so excited to experience the life of Kiryu and Mazuma in the future. I was a Disney kid who grew up with VHS of various Disney Renaissance films like Lion King, Aladdin, and the Goofy movie, so when I heard about an action RPG with an anime kid teaming up with Goofy and Donald traveling across various Disney worlds, I knew I had to play it. What I thought was going to be an average JRPG turned out to be something far greater, especially once I got to the sequel. The first Kingdom Hearts was a good time that had a fun yet simple combat, but Kingdom Hearts 2 dialed up to 11 with how much faster it was and the various mechanics it brought to the table, as well as featuring some of the best bosses I've ever fought against. The series introduced me to the talented Hikaru Utada, who I've become a fan of their music ever since I heard Sanctuary for the first time, combined with that gorgeous animated intro. The music by Yoko Shimomura perfectly fits well within the world of Kingdom Hearts, bringing out some of the most memorable tunes. I love exploring the various Disney worlds into the most, as it features some of my favourite Disney films such as Lion King, Mulan, and Nightmare Before Christmas. I know what made Kingdom Hearts stand out on its own are the original characters like Sora, Riku, and Organization 13 that have gained their own fans. KX1 had a weird but successful concept combining Disney and Final Fantasy that had easily been a funny one-off, but KX2 made it stand out on its own as a legendary title on the PlayStation 2 that made people care about its original characters so much, even having Sora as the most popular character in the Smash Wii U poll. And I was certainly someone who cared about its majority of the cast like Roxas and Axel. While I enjoyed the later titles like Dream Drop Distance and Birth by Sleep, I still think 2 takes the crown as my favourite in this unusual yet amazing franchise. Looking at these covers, you wouldn't think someone who's a straight trans woman would enjoy this game. But as one person said throughout history, don't judge a book by its cover. Catherine may seem like a horny erotica at face value for the straight yads and lesbians, but once you play the game, it becomes an experience about love, maturity, and adultering in, for the most part, a pretty mature way. I was introduced to this game when I was at university, watching one of my old flatmates playing this game, and it intrigued me. Catherine is not really anything I've experienced before, being a combination of a person block puzzle game, which is incredibly fun yet challenging, and a social experience interacting with various NPCs that may give you tough choices. It stars a man named Vincent who has a messy relationship and is assumed to have cheated on his girlfriend, which leads him and other men to overcome a series of obstacles during their dreams, otherwise they die. This spot is down to its port on the PS4 and Switch, titled Catherine Full Body, which includes new routes, quality of life improvements, and a new character Rin, who is a neat addition. The choices you make aren't determined by a good or evil spectrum, but more so like a personality quiz on how the player feels about the situation they are in. Catherine is not something that everyone would kick with, but I feel people who are in their 20s and beyond can relate to these characters in some way. The cast aren't the most lovable bunch, but that's what I like about them. They are deeply troubled people with their own flaws, not to the point I hate them, but to people I can relate to, like the main protagonist Vincent with his indecisiveness on what he wants in life. It's a game I've done back to multiple times, trying to get the multiple endings you can get, and because I find the block person gameplay that addicting, it's certainly a game that stands out. Metroid is one of my favourite Nintendo franchises to this day. My first Metroid game was Metroid Prime, back on the GameCube. However, I didn't get far the first time playing, as for one, I suck at navigation. It didn't help that I never played a Metroidvania prior to Prime. I dropped the game then and tried the NES Metroid game thanks to the NES Classic series on the Game Boy Advance. But that was a worse experience as I got lost from the word go. But that didn't mean I lost interest in trying out Samus's other adventures. It wasn't until I played Zero Mission that I became a fan. It was the first Metroid game I ever finished and decided to beat Prime soon afterwards. Zero Mission is a remake of the NES game, and while it had the same story as the original, it felt like a completely different game, especially including the Zero Suit stealth section right at the end of the campaign. It is the perfect introduction to the series, which I highly recommend to anyone who has any interest in the series to start with. I love the Western comic art style with the cutscenes, character designs and the manuals to the backgrounds, making it possibly my favourite Yichen Game Advance game to date. The art style really sets the mood with Samus being isolated in this dreaded planet. The gameplay includes the best of the previous installments and refines them as Samus feels so comfortable to control, feeling a lot faster than the previous incarnations. This game isn't hard to beat normally, but this game has a lot of depth from the secret techniques like bomb jumping and sign spot that can make you find missile upgrades, as well as ways to skip certain parts, which feels intentional from the developer's part. The game has various difficulties, but also offers plenty of ways to make it easier or harder for yourself, like minimal run challenges, which I've attempted a few times. This game is highly replayable that I can easily go back to. Zero Mission made me a fan of Metroid. If you were a fan of hack and slash games, then Platinum had you covered. I have been a fan of Platinum games ever since I played Mad World on the Nintendo Wii. Besides Nier Automata, their most well-known titles were the Bayonetta trilogy, with the first one perhaps being the one that gave Platinum a lot of attention. Bayonetta 1 was one I adored back when I played it back in 2010, with a lovable main character that slayed the screen, having the same energy as Devil May Cry's Dante. In fact, the original fault behind the first Devil May Cry, including the director Mr. Hideki Kamiya, was in charge of the first game. It had some of the most tight action gameplay you will ever find, and if you are a fan of old Sega arcade games, then you may get a kick out of this one, having a tons of callbacks to the likes of Outrun and Space Harrier. It was an incredible start to the Umbra Witch Odyssey, but it does have a couple of glaring issues, particularly the punishing QuickTime events that kills you instantly if you mess up once, resulting in a lower rank once you beat a stage. It may have sounded like a one and done deal, but thankfully Platinum were able to improve upon it with a sequel, with a little help from Nintendo. Bayonetta 2 was one of the reasons I wanted a Wii U back in 2014, being one of my most anticipated games of that year. Bayo 2 improves on practically everything from the original, with colourful visuals, cooler weapons, as well as removing QTEs, with the exception of the quick button mashing moments, which are mostly used to gain extra hits and points. Things go mental from the word go, as the first mission involves Bayo fighting on a jet plane around New York, then fighting a bunch of Yard's angels, and then one of your demons going berserk, forcing the Umbran Witch to fight it while going up a tall building, and it just gets crazier with its set pieces as you progress. I would say the game is a bit easier compared to the original by including the Umbra climaxes, allowing you to use giant hands for a limited time in the fight, but I think most of the time it made me what I considered an amazing game to enter as stratospheric as one of the greats, with only one other hack and slash to top it. And no, it's not Bayonetta 3. Mario has been around for, wow, 40 years, and since then he has participated in many activities, from driving in go-karts, partying on board games, to curing illnesses. A lot of his adventures could have been on this list. I was considering adding Yoshi's Island on this list, but it is debatable whether that is a Yoshi game or a Mario game. For me, the platformers is what makes me enjoy the Italian summer, more specifically the 3D platformers, as those were oozing with charm and personality. My favourite for a long time were Super Mario Galaxy and Galaxy 2. I even consider them as my favourite games of all time at some point in my life, with their incredible soundtrack, levels and atmosphere. But after playing through Odyssey multiple times in the last 6 years, Odyssey overthrows Galaxy. Odyssey expresses so much charm with the various detailed animations, voice lines from the talented Charles Martinet, the imaginative worlds, as well as a love letter to the plumber's history, even beyond the NES game. As someone who grew up with the series, it was fascinating seeing so many references from his past, not just with the various costumes, but also when it comes to the levels and the inclusion of Pauline, who had a major glow up. Charm and personality can only do so much now, but thankfully the gameplay is incredible. This is a pure fun sandbox experience that takes notes from Super Mario 64's movesets amongst other 3D platformers like Banjo-Kazooie. For example, you aren't set back to the main hub world when you get the main collectible item. Mario is known to have various power-ups, but Odyssey takes it to the next level by letting you possess an enemy or NPC, leading to some creative challenges like transforming into a bullet bill, a frog, to even a hammer bro. Mario has never been hard, but what I love about Odyssey is similar to how I felt about Metroid, that being player expression. Catching the way you want to tackle an obstacle. You could get the Power Moon using the way the game presents itself, but you could use the plumber's various jumping abilities to create a shortcut. You can even get a moon that a novice probably wouldn't be able to get straight away. There are loads of moons to get, 10 times more than the past 3D adventures, which may discourage completionist, but I never felt pressured in doing it as it feels I can do it at my own pace and stop when I want to stop. I loved almost every moment from it that led to some amazing surprises, and hopefully we see more voyages like Odyssey. Like Mario, the Blue Hedgehog has been around throughout my life, and even embarked into this world in the same year, and since then we have both changed quite a bit. I've enjoyed a lot of his adventures, from the adventure games to the boost titles, but I've always had a fondness for his classic 2D days, which I believe to be the peaks of 2D platformers, specifically Sonic 2. All of the Mega Drive games are peak in my eyes, and yes, even the first one, but Mania for me is Stars Damon. I was excited when I saw the Mania trailer, so on the day it came out, I woke up, got some coffee, turned on my Nintendo Switch, and immediately bought and played it all the way through, 3 times in one day no less. The next day I went back to more because I was that addicted to Mania. The original yet you play as Sonic, Tails and Knuckles, the latter two who weren't playable besides spin-offs since 2006, and each of them felt like how they played back in the good old days. Sonic got the new drop dash ability, which allowed him to get extra boost when holding the jump button, which helped keep the momentum. This move was an actual game changer that made him my favourite character in the base game. I say base game as the game got an expansion a year later with Sonic Mania Plus, that included the new Encore mode as well as adding 2 new characters, or shall I say old, that being Mighty the Armadillo and Ray the Flying Squirrel, who have been absent for decades. These were 2 of my favourite characters to play as Mighty can bounce off spikes while curled up and has a powerful slam attack, while Ray is similar to Cape Mario, making him the perfect character for time attacks. All 5 characters feel unique, while keeping to the core of the game. While Sonic is no stranger at looking back at the past, reusing zones at Green Hill, and it's no different here, I feel the other designers put their own spin on things, making these old zones feel like new. There are a couple of brand new original ones that are some of the best, like Studio Opus, being set in a film studio, and Press Garden that starts out as a newspaper print area and then becomes an oriental ice garden, showing the stage's deforestation. I'm so happy we got Mania, and it's thanks to Tristan Whitehead, his team, and Sega for allowing them to make one. It gets to show you that even people who made fan games are a staple part of pushing this industry. I played Pokemon as a kid, and while I loved it, it didn't make me want to play more JRPGs. It wasn't until I played Tales of Symphonia and another game that I became a fan of the genre and made me gravitate to these games with story and lore being one of the primary focuses. My older brother bought Symphonia around the time it came out, and seeing him play it reminded me of a fighting game that made me interested in trying it out. Since it was a multiplayer experience, which at the time was uncommon in the genre, made me try it out. I enjoyed it, but I never finished it until the PS3 release. Instead, I just watched him complete it. Years later, when the Xbox 360 was out, I heard about a new Tales game coming out for that console that I wanted to get it. I got the game, and ever since then I've played it numerous times, even doing a bad Let's Play years ago. I've still got my original copy to this day that I still cherish. I felt that Vesperia improved a lot of things from Symphonia, from a more refined combat system that has a lot of depth. It is one of my favourite battle systems in any JRPG. I mostly played Yuri and Repeat in my playthroughs, but it's nice how you have a wide range of characters to play as, making each playthrough fun to come back to. The story and characters are amazing, discussing the meaning of justice, corruption in the workforce, and the relations between the lower and upper class, and compared to other mediums that have told similar stories, Vesperia is one of the best to address it. I love everyone in this cast, from the social outcast Rita, the other social outcast Estelle, the lovable goofball Raven, to my handsome man Uriel. It's so nice to see an RPG party who are mostly adults. Heck, the main character Yuri is about 21 years old who has some demons, but still has fun. The cutscenes help each other stand out, but I also love the fully voiced skits that aren't only a good way to guide the player, but to also let the characters talk about the most mundane stuff. The skits remind me of a D&D party just caught in casually that fleshes the party out a bit more, which it didn't need to, as every member of the group have their moments assigned to develop into star-tiered characters. I've only played a handful of Tales games, but out of all the ones I've played, Vesperia is one I remember the most fondly. When it comes to amazing JRPGs, Xenoblade would certainly be on this list. I played every Xenoblade game from the first game to 3. They offer some of the most moving stories, beloved characters, and explorative worlds imaginable. Choosing one was hard. All of them are at least great, especially 3 that possibly has the best battle system out of the bunch. But my favourite has to go to the first one, more specifically the Definitive Edition, by updating the visuals and the UI from the original game, as well as including a new epilogue story. This is perhaps my favourite party in any JRPG. I just love everyone here, from the upbeat dude bro Ryan with his memorable lines, the hot stud and that is Dunban, to Maya, who is the genuine article. Salt is one of my favourite JRPG programs ever, who started out his journey seeking vengeance for the sake of a lost loved one, like any normal person with that kind of power would, to develop into a better person. Without spoiling anything, the villains are also amazing, with some having a lot of layers. What helps the story are the writing, the cinematography during the cutscenes, and the top tier performances, especially my man Adam Howden as Salt, who puts out raw emotion into his lines. The music is top notch, composed by the magnificent Ace Plus and Yoko Shimomura. I've spent hours exploring Bionis and Mechonis, especially in the Definitive Edition, that is just breathtaking to look at. I love how the game rewards you, exploring the world with experience points, new materials, armor and weapons, as well as encountering new side quests and monsters, making it one of my favourite places to explore. The combat is amazing, with each party member having their own abilities, especially Salt, who can predict the enemy's powerful attack, which not only makes you strategize how you fight, but blends the narrative and gameplay in one neat package. It was a clash of titans between 1 and 3, but Xenoblade 1 takes the crown, making it one of my favourite JRPGs of all time. I've still done a few more JRPGs, and this time it's a Persona title. My first experience with Persona was back when I was in university after hearing about 3 and 4 from other students. One of them gave me a free copy of Persona 3 Fez. I didn't finish it until recently, but I like the idea of a high school student building bonds with people to combine into various creatures together, as well as how the students summon them. The demon design's yet so cool. I never finished 3 until recently, but that didn't stop me being excited for Persona 5. I bought 5 when it came out in 2017, and I was hooked. The story really grabbed me, being centered around a group of teens who felt powerless by the world around them and had the ability to do something about it. It started off slow, but I felt the conflict between Kamoshida, Ann, Ryuji, and Seo at the beginning was so impactful that I became emotional. The visuals are striking with the rebellious red matching the attitude of our heroes. The jazz music is one of my favourite soundtracks that I listen to on the fly, and even the normal battle music, Your Surprise, that played all the way through did not bother me at all. I adored how integral the turn-based combat and the high school simulator perfectly blend with one another, as what you do in the high school sections benefits the dungeon crawling and vice versa. One of my favourite things was just spending time in the Velvet Room trying to make some strong personas with a good move list. The customization in these games are so good. 2017 was a rough year for me that I won't get into, but Persona 5 was something that made me feel a bit better, not only because it was something to take my mind off, but these characters continued on despite the situation they're in. I met Makoto's voice actress, Jeremy Ye, who was so nice during the convention, making it one of my favourite memories in the last decade. It had been a while since I played P5, so my opinion may have changed. So I recently played it again earlier this year, whether it was just a honeymoon phase, but this time I tried the royal version, which included a few new features, a new locale, sociates, and a new post-game, and it is still a gem when I first played it. The new content, while I have a few nitpicks, was something I was hooked on and became an emotional experience. I freaking love Persona 5. I previously mentioned that I had my favourite hack and slash title on this list. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here it is. I became a fan of the series back around the mid-2000s after playing Devil May Cry 3 for the first time from an old friend, and ever since then I played all the mainline titles as well as owning the anime on DVD. I enjoyed the combat, the goofball characters, and the general aesthetics. I was obsessed. However, after 4, they took Devil May Cry to a different direction, giving it to Ninja Theory, which, while it had some merits, was an overall disappointment for me. It took them years to revisit the original canon till 2019 with Devil May Cry 5. I remember watching the E3 Xbox conference and was swooned after seeing that Capcom were going back to the characters I loved. I remember playing the main theme Devil Trigger non-stop until I got the game for my 28th birthday. I played that game from start to finish, and all that time I had the biggest smile on my face. The base game allowed you to play as 3 characters, with veterans Dante and Nero, as well as newcomer V, who I admit took me some time to get used to, but overall I found his puppet style gameplay to be pretty enjoyable. Dante got some new creative toys, and Nero, who is perhaps my favourite to play as, also got some new toys with the devil arms that each have their own properties and refined his fighting style from 4. Virgil was added for the update, and like DMC3, he is so awesome to play as, and the music, so damn good. Bury the Light, Crimson Cloud, Devil Trigger, all bangers. With how many characters are in your disposal, you sure won't get bored. The combat is so good, rewarding the player to get creative by spicing up your attacks. As a fan, the plot was the ultimate love letter. Not only did they mention characters from the anime, but they perfectly continue Nero's backstory. I literally had a smile on my face all the way through for my first playthrough. I am looking forward to whatever Hideki Itsuno and his team put out. They certainly made a hell of a bass with this one. Perhaps my favourite Nintendo franchise, Fire Emblem is a long-running tactical turn-based strategy series running all the way back to 1990, and for the most part consists of games with amazing world building, story, characters, and gameplay. Like many folks who grew up with the GameCube, my first experience with the franchise was Marth and Roy's appearance in Melee. I grew attached to these two, particularly Marth, that I had to experience the series they appeared in. I've still yet to play Roy's Quest, but for the most part, I played almost every game that has appeared in the West, with my very first game being the one on the GBA, starring Roy's dad, Edward. Like I mentioned earlier, Symphonia was my introductions to JRPGs, but it was also thanks to Fire Emblem on the GBA that I became a fan of JRPGs, thanks to the plot and its characters. The franchise is popular now, but back in the 2000s, it felt like I stumbled upon something rare only I knew about. I used to sing its praises to all my friends at school. It's one of my favourite Fire Emblem games to this day. However, it's not my favourite. That has to do with the very first 3D game. To this day, this is still my favourite title in Fire Emblem history. I played this game multiple times since I got this for Christmas in 2005, and since then I'm reminded why I love it so much. The world building is strong, with this one with its many kingdoms, races and politics that I could discuss for ages. To me, this has the strongest sets of characters, each with their own backstories, development, and their connections to other characters, not just the main hero. While the main villain is just pure evil with no redeeming qualities, he at least loves being an evil prick that causes so much pain and suffering, not just for the heroes you recruit, but even the bad guys you go up against. Some of the other villains are more morally grey, either fighting for the country or other motives, and heck, even some of the units you do have some questionable morals. It also has my favourite Lord in the series, which he technically isn't, as he isn't a noble or someone with divine powers, but a simple mercenary who believes in equality. God, I could gush about it for hours. Path of Radiance has some of the best gameplay in the franchise too, with some great map designs, mission objectives, and character building. Like the GBA game, Path of Radiance has a variety of mission types, such as defending for a number of turns, escaping the map, seizing the enemy fort, and defeating the boss, never really having a dull moment. While not all units are that useful, like the Thief class, a lot of them are viable, allowing me to experiment with different units in every playthrough. If you have to play a Fire Emblem title, play this one any way you can. I have one more JRPG on this list, and oh boy, this one is an incredible game. I was into the Kingdom Hearts series that just recently played Dream Drop Distance, and I was recommended a game that was done by the same team. I don't remember hearing anything about it prior and went in blind, and oh my god, I fell in love. I mentioned earlier how Catherine was a game nothing I experienced. The same can be applied to The World Ends With You. There is nothing like it. This was made for the Nintendo DS in mind, as you control two characters on each screen, one on the bottom using a stylus, who can perform various attacks depending on how you move the stylus, and the other is on the top screen that uses the buttons and D-pads. There are a lot of customization options too, from adjusting the difficulty any way you like, to the various pins you collect, which grants the character on the bottom screen to use a bunch of attacks. There are tons of pins in the game to choose from that fits your playstyle. I played this game numerous times, and in most of my playthroughs, I've always tried to experiment. 2E has a cool premise. You play as Netu Sakuraba, who wakes up in the middle of Shibuya with a mysterious timer on his hand. It turns out he has entered the Reaper's game along with a bunch of other people when they must team up in twos and complete various tasks in 7 days. Otherwise, they will be erased from existence. The thing is, Netu has no recollection on how he ended up there, so he must participate and find out how he got there. The World Ends review starts off intense, and as you play through it, the plot thickens with many exciting reveals. I love everyone you play as here, with two of my favourites being Netu Sakuraba, who starts out as an antisocial person who has trouble opening up to people, and Siki, who has a cheerful personality at face value but is keeping something hidden. I can relate to both of these characters on a personal level, as I had problems opening up to others. Once I got through the ending for the first time, I almost cried, which is something that doesn't usually happen when I play games. Besides the addictive gameplay and touching story, I adore the manga art style, with the panels flying left and right during cutscenes and heavy outlines of the characters. The soundtrack is incredible, with a variety of battle and overworld themes of all kinds that I will bop my head to. The World Ends review does have a learning curve with its control scheme, especially if you're playing Final Remix on the Switch, but I urge you to at least try it once. One of my favourite series of all time is the Metal Gear Saga, where I began playing them in the 2000s. These were stealth franchises that consisted of an ongoing plot with many plot twists, political drama, and action. The stealth gameplay is super fun, letting you approach the campaigns in various ways, whether it be lethal or non-lethal. Most of them are amazing, and there are a couple I would consider a contender as some of the greatest games of all time. However, they can only be one, and while it doesn't take the gold, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater was so darn close. Specifically, Subsistence. Snake Eater is a perfect blend of high-tier storytelling, character interactions, presentation, and gameplay, being the one game I would recommend anyone to give a shot, even if they haven't experienced the rest of the series. It helps that this game is set at the beginning of the timeline, where even a newbie won't get lost in the plot. The plot is simple to understand, like a classic Bond film. Stop the crazy madman from starting World War III, but there is plenty of depth when it comes to your and character motivations, which leads to plenty of twists, making you think just who is in the right. Colonel Volden is a straightforward villain, which I liked, and the impact he made on not just on the characters and story with his tenacious attitude is something to marvel at, but the boss is one of my favourite villains ever, making the situation more grey, even so much that it got me to look into my own perspective on life as a teenager, seeing things more than just black and white. This was even before I was active on the internet, so I didn't look into the world as much outside my own bubble before I picked up Snake Eater. Like Path of Radiance, I enjoyed the political drama in the MGS saga. Naked Snake is a really lovable dude too, with a lot of charisma than his clone, so it was interesting how he became the villain in the very first game. He is as serious as Solid Snake, but doesn't shy away from his human side, being quirky in the codec calls, being fascinated by the simpler things, and when he's interacting with other characters in the main plot. Unlike prior games, 3 is set in a jungle with plenty of uneven terrains with stuff to interact with, feeling it up more open, which gives you more options to get through your objective. While Snake is more out in the open with far less walls to cover him, like in the prior games, he is equipped with a bunch of camouflage face paints and outfits, so he can blend in with the environment, leading to some creative ways to stealthing. I also just like dressing up my characters. This is not just a stealth game, but also a survival one, where you need to hunt for food, repair injuries, and avoid enemy guards and traps, given that feeling that nature is your greatest enemy. Despite playing Snake Eater multiple times, there's always something interesting to discover, from cool gameplay moments, dialogue interactions, to Easter eggs. Along with Devil May Cry, Metal Gear took me out of my comfort zone, trying out games outside of Sega and Nintendo consoles, and while Path of Radiance had a lot of mature themes, MGS3 made me try out more games with mature themes, and for that, I have to thank it. Even if you haven't touched an MGS game, I still highly recommend trying out MGS3. Throughout the years, I've normally had a few titles that were considered my favourite. At one point, it was the newest Smash title, and the next, it was the likes of Mario Galaxy. Metal Gear Solid 3 was also considered my favourite game at one point, but these games tend to flip-flop, and while MGS3 is now at the comfy second place, the others tend to suffer around throughout the years. There has been one game that has always been a close contender throughout these years, but over the years, I can confidently say it should have been Top Banana. The Donkey Kong Country trilogy, specifically the Super Nintendo trilogy, are by far some of the most beloved and replayed games for me. If I wasn't doing a one per series rule, all of them, plus Tropical Freeze, would have easily made it on this list. But since this is one per series, my absolute favourite of all time is Diddy's Conquest. It may be starting to have a game about a pair of monkeys trying to get their bananas back from a cutthroat pirate at the top, considering I've had games with much more emotional impact and complex prior. So why is a game starring two cartoon monkeys at the top, and why the second title? Donkey Kong Country 2 is what I considered to be the peak of 2D platformers, with some of the best physics and level design in any 2D platformer. I adore the pirate aesthetic and the level theming, and the music is perhaps my favourite soundtrack of all time, solely composed by the magnificent David Wise that I could listen to for hours. The animal buddies are fun to control, the collectibles are rewarding to collect, and I like the animations that gave these little monkeys a lot of personality. There are loads of reasons, but to put it simply, it's nostalgic for me ever since I played it back in 1995. While I played the likes of Mario and Sonic prior, I was so impressed by it that it was the reason I got so passionate about video games, shaping the person I am today. I always make it a tradition to at least play it once every year, and every time I do, I know I always have a good time. I hope you enjoyed the video. I would love to know what some of your favourite games are. Do you have any cherished memories of playing your favourite game? If so, I would love to hear them in the comments below. If you are watching this during the holidays, then I hope you have a happy new year.